G'day everybody, my name is Elliot Waters and you're listening to the Dysregulated podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. So just a quick little episode. I just want to congratulate myself in front of everybody. Today I went for a run, my first run in months, and it was pretty good. It's pretty good. I only did like 2-3K or something. I didn't bother timing it because it's not about the time. It's about just doing it, just getting out there and having a go. And it was really good, you know, the sun was shining, the birds were singing, and Elliot was breathing very, very heavy. And that's the thing, it's funny, you know, 2 minutes into it, it's like, yep, I'm back. Nothing's changed, I've still got it, let's go. And I knew that if I put speed on at that point, which I did, that it was all going to blow up. It was all going to blow up, and that is exactly what happened. But it doesn't matter because we got it done. Kicking and screaming, we crossed that line, we did it. And it's really good. But it's hard because, you know, if you're like me, you don't compare yourself to who you were yesterday. You compare yourself to when you're at your peak. So I used to run marathons and all that sort of stuff, used to train every day, loved it. And I'll tell you what, doing that was a great sort of like protective layer against a lot of these mental illnesses. And I noticed that there's no surprise either that once I stopped doing a lot of this exercising and stuff, the mental illness has got a bit more of a hold. You know, there's more than just a correlation there. I think there's something more. So exercising, very, very important. But it is hard, especially when you compare yourself to when you're at your best, because that's a comparison you just cannot win. So these expectations need to be in line with reality, I suppose. And like I said, it's about comparing yourself to who you were yesterday, not at your peak. But I did it. There was a lot of anxiety as I was putting the shoes on. You know, there was a lot of, again, the expectations and all this pressure that I put on myself. You know, I was thinking, we're going for a run. Running's part of our identity. We should be doing this more often, blah, blah, blah. So I had to push all that aside and just be like, right, we're just running. One foot in front of the other. Who cares about speed and time? Just get out there and do it and feel the amazing feeling of achievement once it's all done. And that's exactly what we got. The dopamine rushed in and said, yes, Elliot, you're finally doing something for your health that's positive. Keep this going. There you go. There's a bit of happy feeling to just make sure that you nail in that as a routine or part of your routine. And that's really good. It's really important. But it was difficult. There's no two ways about that. Like I've said, there was a lot of expectation. There's a lot going on as I put my shoes on. But the main thing is, the takeaway point is that I did it. I did it and it felt good. And I think we're going to continue to do it. And I really wanted to just put that out there on the podcast because this, again, is another way to keep me accountable. Because I've just told you all then, this is going to be part of my routine. So you guys are going to keep me accountable. And I thank you for that. I really do. Another sort of habit that I'm trying to build, there's a few of them, is meditating. I'll tell you, meditating, it's a tough one, especially for people with ADHD. I think it's very, very difficult because it is about focusing on, well, whatever it is, focusing on nothing or letting the thoughts go, all that sort of stuff. If your brain is just jumping around left, right, and center, and there's just no sort of anchor point, it can be very, very difficult. But that's the bit of meditation that's so important because it teaches you, especially those with ADHD, how to hone your focus and block out distraction. And it's very, very important because it's a skill like anything else that we need to learn. And those with ADHD, such as myself, this is a skill that we're just not born with. So we need to develop it ourselves. And meditation is such a great way to hone that focus. You know, it is mental fitness. It's about working out the brain. And these neurons, you know, neural pathways, you know, the grooves that we tend to stick to, if we do this consistently, you know, if we meditate every day, our ability to focus, that groove that we've worked on will be solidified and then everything else will improve from there. So meditation is so important. It's important for everybody. And it's important for people with anxiety because it really works on the amygdala and really, you know, lessens that fight or flight or freeze response. So people with anxiety disorders, it's very, very helpful as well. ADHD, because of the whole attention thing. You know, even anyone that's got a bit of emotional dysregulation, it's all about finding that happy place or that really solid sort of grounding and then anchoring yourself to that moment. And mental illnesses really like to try and drag you away from wherever you've tried to anchor yourself. So meditation is a brilliant way to fight back and drop that anchor and say, nah, this is where I am. This is what's going on. Let's go. So meditation. I really hope this episode is sort of making sense, because I tell you, as I sit here now doing it, I feel, remember an episode or two ago, I was talking about feeling like slowed down cognitively, my processing speed, etc. I'm really feeling that at the moment. I feel like I'm stumbling over words and not getting my sentences out properly, and, you know, there's no flow to this episode. And it's interesting because I'd like to know, if you can, a bit of feedback, because my distorted view potentially is saying all these negative things, and I actually don't really know if it's true or not. I'm not really sure if I'm actually stumbling over my words or if that's just the inner critic having a field day and just dragging me down. I don't quite know. So that's just something interesting I thought I'd note as we're talking right now on the podcast, is that my inner critic is absolutely slamming me, telling me that we're not getting our words out, we're stumbling, you know, our arguments are not linear, I suppose, because our cognitive speed is slowing or has slowed. And I do wonder if that's true or not. The inner critic isn't always pushing falsehoods. The inner critic, you know, when controlled, is a good thing because it pushes you to do better. But when it's not controlled, then it just makes everything into a negative. It doesn't matter what you do, you could have done a better job. And I think that is a little bit what's going on right now. So there you go. As we speak right now, that is one of the challenges that I'm up against, which is this inner critic. You know, and the inner critic was there when we were running as well. It was saying, you know, you used to do this for fun, and look at you now, look how slow you are and breathing heavy. You know, when I meditate, the inner critic's there too. You know, well, I'm getting better at pushing it away during meditation, but same thing, you know. Oh, you're not focusing enough, you're not doing a good job, blah, blah, blah. And then obviously the inner critic is doing stuff now again. So the real important step, one of the real important steps for me moving forward, is I need to control this inner critic. And I can only really do that through, I think meditating's one, to put up a barrier and be able to push it aside, put it in the corner. And I think external feedback, so feedback in my environment, I think is important as well. Objective, or as objective as possible, feedback. So from you guys, I suppose, is a good example. Use your feedback. Say if someone was to hint, write in on the Instagram account, the dysregulated.podcast, and say that this episode was actually really good, well, then I can use that evidence against the inner critic and push back and say, no. Here's an objective viewpoint. You know, this is someone else who has made this judgment, and we need to respect that. And I'm going to choose to believe that instead of the rubbish that you're coming up with. That is a big part of me moving forward, and my prognosis is we need to get this inner critic under control. And I wasn't going to bring up the inner critic on this episode, but hey, you know, this is the most real fair income podcast on all the internet, and I'm telling you in real time what is going on in my brain. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot going on, but there's also not a lot going on. It is a weird phenomenon. I'll tell you what, my brain, unbelievable. Anyway, that's enough for this episode. I've done enough rambling. Thank you for listening as always. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you certainly can at elliot.t.waters, and you can follow the show at thedysregulated.podcast. And if you happen to go on the podcast Instagram page, you'll see on the story that I've done the amount of work I'm putting into this ADHD episode. I don't know when I'm going to release this episode or when it's going to be ready, but I tell you, it's going to be a big one. It's going to be good. It is going to be the gold standard when it comes to ADHD, knowledge, treatment, everything. I've got it all there, so it's very exciting. But, you know, again, inner critic, we're writing too much. You know, there's too much info. It's going to be boring for people, you know, blah, blah, blah. Always got to push back against that inner critic. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time here on the Dysregulated podcast.